initiative to curb freebies has received a big blow. The Congress, Aam Aadmi Party, CPM, even AIMIM have protested against the pro forma that's been suggested by the Election Commission of India. Meanwhile, the BJP is yet to reply on the same. The Election Commission had sought the opinion of all parties on the issue of the distribution of freebies by various political parties. Remember, during the election season, politicians frequently promise voters freebies and growth in exchange for their support. But when Prime Minister Narendra Modi disparaged opposition parties, the matter was brought to light. That was just a few months ago. Now, this ongoing freebie debate has grabbed the attention of not just the Election Commission of India, but even the CAG as well, where discussions are now taking place to resolve this entire issue. So much so, a risk analysis report by the RBI has highlighted that the fiscal health of states like Punjab, Rajasthan, West Bengal, Kerala and even Andhra Pradesh warrants careful assessment because of their larger focus simply on social welfare. And with that, let me also explain to you what the ECI has proposed. But before that, here's a look at our report. So remember, there are lofty proposals made by parties. But here is what the Election Commission of India has proposed for these political parties to fill up in a form as far as the funding is concerned. Format for disclosure on promises made to aid standardization and comparison. That is one of the requirements of this performer. Disclosure on the financial impact of the promises made for voters to make informed choices. Disclosure on financial implications of these poll promises and the impact on states' fiscal health. Remember, it is the taxpayers' money that is going from the exchequer. Disclosure should mention financial resources required and ways to finance the promise that's been made by these political parties. Apart from these proposals, which the ECI has been asking for, what is the cost of free power? Remember, free power is something that is being promised by most of the parties, including Aam Aadmi Party, even the Congress Party. What is the cost of this? In Punjab, which is currently governed by the Aam Aadmi Party, 300 units of free electricity every month to each household has cost the exchequer 7,200 crore rupees up to 8,500 crore rupees as annual subsidy. As far as Punjab is concerned, the debt to the DISCOMs is 9,020 crore rupees. It is second highest after Rajasthan. 742 crore is the debt to non-state power generation companies. 2,49,187 crore rupees is the overall outstanding liabilities, and this is data ending March 2021. Let's have a quick look at Delhi. 200 units of free electricity every month to the household has been promised again by the Aam Aadmi Party. That's the cost, 3,250 crore rupees by the Delhi government allocation for power subsidy from the year 2022 till 2023. 475 crore is the debt to non-state power generating companies. 3,600 crore rupees is the overall outstanding liabilities, that is again ending March 2021. And that is the question that I'm now posing to our guests as well. Protest to protect freebies. Is opposition over-reliant on the issue of freebies to woo their voter base? Let me now also open that question to my guests, and let me introduce my guests. I'm joined in by Mr. Rajiv Pandey, who's the national spokesperson of the BJP, Aishwarya Mahadev, who's the spokesperson of the Congress Party, Kishore Subramaniam, who's a financial expert, and Mohammad Amin, who's the former joint director of the Election Commission of India. Many thanks to you all for joining my show. Aishwarya, if I could begin with you, why the brouhaha over showing or rather sharing the source of funding and the financial implications of all of it?
Good evening. I think first and foremost, whether it's several different opposition parties, but when the first conversation about Freebies actually did come up, or what are freebies, I think the biggest problem with a lot of parties in the opposition was who and how do you define what is a freebie and what is a welfare measure? I think a lot of governments of several different states have different metrics of what is for the welfare of people. For example, some people may prioritize cutting corporate tax as giving you, a better outcome, while you see that, the amount collected or revenue generated from the corporate sector has fallen by over 1 lakh crore. While some people may believe that obviously offering welfare measures or even things that improve human capital is something that is essential as a function for a government to do. One, the problem exists in who is going to define the terms and conditions of what is a freebie and what is a necessary welfare measure. Because let's be honest, there was a time when even midday meal schemes were seen as populist. I think that is the first problem. And the second problem is we believe very honestly that the metric with which you measure the party or the dispensation in power as compared to opposition parties is very, very different. There is a subjective standard that is analyzed. And I think this pro forma also, if you give us strict guidelines that are adherent or something that every political party can accept, it is free and fair.
But do you not think that the pro forma is asking for the source of the funding, for the implications, the financial implications upon various states of that funding? What is so biased about it?
So first and foremost, for example, when the Congress came out with the Nyaya scheme, people said it was not fiscally feasible or whatnot, but Mr. Chidambaram gave you the entire terminology of it. The problem with the pro forma is this. What do you say as a freebie? What is a necessary policy measure? And what is something of an improvement of a current policy stance, right? For example, whether it is expanding the arms of who comes under the Narega, who comes under the PDS scheme, whether it is the taxing bracket and whatnot, are political parties which expect to come to power. See, one, they make manifesto promises. It's reasonable to also give you a certain amount of the feasibility and the financial feasibility, which the Congress party has done. But the third, the biggest problem is when you allow the Election Commission to make these arbitrary decisions on whether it is a freebie or whether it is a necessary policy measure is something that we want clarity on.
Aishwarya, that is why we have Mohammed Amin on the show as well, as somebody who's been an integral part of the Election Commission of India. Mr. Amin, if I could bring you in on this, you just heard what Aishwarya has to say. I would, of course, like to pose the question that she's been asking. How does one discriminate between freebies and welfare schemes, A? But do you think that the Election Commission also asking for a pro forma, is that also reeking of any sort of bias where there's support being extended to the establishment or the government in power through that pro forma?
No, this is not the subject of the favor of the government. Election Commission is always free and fair poll for every party, not a single party, and always giving the opportunity to all parties in India. Free, fair poll. Listen, in this regard, there are a lot of controversies about the freebies. So in this regard, the Election Commission has given the pro forma, as you were telling me, and the party has received the pro forma for the ECI has sent to the all parties and added. This will be added in the mode of model code of conduct. Means it's a public responsibility to understand which party is fooling to the public in the name of freebies. Okay, and listen, in case of the lot of the schemes are there, they are providing to public like Yojana and other policies. So these are the regular policies. This government, earlier government and coming government, all are giving same, like for helping the public. Like last time you seen in the COVID time, the Prime Minister has given to door for every person. The government
absolutely agree with you. It's also the cost to the state exchequer. Yes, we'll be debating that at length. And since the party in power is also right, Mr. Amin, since the party in power is also being questioned, let me bring in Rajiv Pandey on that note. Rajiv Pandey, how do you assess the kind of allegations that are coming in, not just from Aishwarya, but the host of opposition parties? There's also been a sense of ambiguity since your party is yet to respond on the proposal made by the EC. Why so? Why have you chosen the silence so far? And do you agree that it's time to end this kind of over-dependency of political parties on freebies?
First of all, Election Commission is a statutory body. It's an independent body. And that body is responsible for free and fair election in this country. You can remember that how the Election Commission has transformed the voting pattern. You can remember that what was happening in Bihar when the elections booths were looted and rigged. Now today, what Election Commission is saying? Election Commission is saying only three things. Whatever promise you are doing, let's not go into the welfare scheme or freebies, whatever it is. You have to tell that from where it will be financed and what will be the impact on the fiscal health of that state or center. Forget about a state, I'm talking about center also. Just 1 second. Most of the states have become revenue deficit in this country. Repayment, whatever they are doing, their budget, half of the budgetary allocation is towards the repayment of the earlier debt. So you will keep on taking debt and your budget deficit will go up. And for sustainable growth, fiscal discipline is very, very important. Now, what CAG is saying, that all states, their debt, borrowing, subsidies, there should be a list, and thereafter how you are financing. EC is not saying that you cannot give freebies or welfare scheme, but whatever you are offering to the people at large, you should know that how it will be financed, and people should decide. Just I am telling you an example.
In fact,
just one line.
Rajiv, I have other guests as well. Let me also give them a chance. I'm going to come back to you because let's not forget that the Election Commission has deliberated much upon this entire proposal, and that's when they have arrived upon this decision. I will be talking about that as well. Kishore Subramanian, if I could bring you in on this, even the RBI has cautioned that rising subsidy burdens have stretched the state government finances that are already exacerbated by the pandemic. What is the kind of burden borne by the state exchequer in your knowledge?
Okay, so primarily let me give you one fundamental point. Today, after 75 years of independence, if we still have to give a freebie, we need to fundamentally understand that parties have failed in providing proper welfare. Because if the people were equipped enough financially, you didn't have to give a freebie in the first place. So I find political parties speaking about welfare being oxymoronish. Point number one. Point number two, rebutting to what the Congress lady did say, I would like to quote them wrong, because the fiscal irresponsibility of Congress throughout their tenure, whether it was last 10 years back or 20 years back, has been consistent. And answering you one more point which you raised, that BJP has been silent. I'm not a BJP spokesperson. There's a spokesperson in the panel today. But let me tell you, this debate is today happening because the Honorable Prime Minister of this country started this point and he wanted to stop the revenue culture. Now, when you ask the question about the numbers, let me tell you, every single state, when you talk about the state to GSDP ratio, is revenue deficit, and it is going down. If you take states like Punjab, where 300 units have been announced, the estimated revenue deficit is at about 44%. Now, that is pathetic. If you look at DISCOM, more than 1,10,000 crores is due as of March. Now, no political party can claim holier than thou. I think that political parties are opposing this for a simple single reason, that without freebie, they will not be able to win votes. And why will they not be able to win votes? Because there is no performance measure. The only measure under which a party is dismissed in this country is law and order. So performance, metrics, fiscal responsibility is all out of the window. And sorry to say, Congress has been a major contributor to such absolute fiscal irresponsibility in this country.
All right, Aishwarya, would you like to respond to that?
You know, first and foremost, when they talk about fiscal discipline, I think you need to look at the number of BJP states that basically have their liabilities far more than what obviously the regulatory standard
Madam,
is.
I need to come in and tell you that. No, I need to
I
tell
have
you
not
that.
interrupted you.
Right, let her complete, please.
Courtesy. Thank you. Right? The fact of the matter is, I'm sure the analyst has a lot to say. He can talk about how the Congress is the bane of everything, and everything of fiscal irresponsibility comes from the Congress. While if you look at the GDP today, the unemployment, the inflation, and the situation of the financial the debacle of our country. Obviously, of course, that's also the Congress's responsibility. But let's come down to a few very...
Let's also be fair. I'd like to interject, Aishwarya, because your fact right now, factually you're wrong, because I'm referring to that fiscal report that's been presented by the RBI. It's a risk analysis report. It names states like Punjab, it names states like Kerala, Rajasthan, which is a Congress-governed state. It names states like Andhra Pradesh. So it's unfair to only attack BJP-ruled states.
Well, as a Congress spokesperson here, up against 3 people who are speaking for the BJP, I think it is my onus to talk about the fiscal
spokesperson. I'm a financial consultant.
Let's be fair.
Sir, can you
stop Subramaniam, please let Aishwarya complete. Aishwarya, go ahead.
Complete. So the fact of the matter remains, it is my point to obviously say that, the BJP also is not fiscally responsible in its financial decisions, one. And the second thing is, you talk about the election commission being so free and fair, which is that why that political funding and electoral bonds are such an opaque little curtain in our country today? Let's make one thing very clear.
But why are we mixing issues? Aishwarya, why are we mixing issues? Is it fair to question the election commission's initiative, one that's been arrived upon only after the recommendations that were made by the CAG and his advisory board? Let me also quote what the former CGI had to say. Mr. Ramana said he asked for a balance between loss of money to the exchequer and welfare schemes. How many bodies are you questioning? Are you questioning the CAG? Are you also questioning the former CGI of the nation? Who all will you call biased?
I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying the actions of certain institutions today, especially when they have convenient dates for different state elections, though 2 states particularly have to go to polls together. Second is certain facts about how they've been functioning, whether it's electoral bonds and whatnot. Everything is suspect. And as a free citizen of this country, I can't question it. But let me get back to your larger issue of what I'm trying to highlight, and hopefully nobody will interrupt me in this. The fact of the matter remains that there is a certain amount of arbitrariness and obviously disproportionate response to political parties in the opposition as compared to the current dispensation one. If you can ensure that they are equally measured, they're equally taken and put in the same plank, then fine, we are
Rajiv Pandey, let her complete.
Second thing is it actually the mandate of the Election Commission or even the Supreme Court, because this originally did become a petition in the Supreme Court, to actually talk about what is being promised to the citizenry? Because if somebody has promised something, if it does not happen, then the electorate then will go and choose and work against or vote against.
All right, let's also listen to what Rajiv has to say.
Democracy.
No, I've
given you time. Let Rajiv
I'm just saying
speak.
only one thing. This issue is being debated before the apex court. This issue is being discussed by Honorable Prime Minister. Now, Election Commission has sought recommendation, comment, suggestion by the political parties. If you are saying that all the parties are involved in this, let us there be a regulation, let us there be a pro forma. EC is not saying that you cannot make promises, but you cannot make fake promises. What Aam Aadmi Party is doing in Punjab, what Aam Aadmi Party is doing... One second. I have not disturbed anybody. Right now, the risk analysis, top 5 states. Just 1 second.
Mr. Amin, I will come to you. Mr. Amin, I will come to you.
Risk analysis, Punjab, Rajasthan, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala is on top. I am saying if BJP is also supporting this, they are saying, so let EC, because finally EC has to do one thing which is very important, that is the free and fair election. An informed choice by the voter is the basic tenet for free and fair election. Why you are not going and telling the common people? Common people have rejected Nyaya scheme, so-called Rahul Gandhi's brainchild. People say, no, I don't want this 6,000 rupees per month.
All right, Mr. Amin would like to say something. Mr. Amin, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Amin.
You understand, it happened because of the informed choice by the people of the country.
No, are we questioning just the... No, Mr. Amin, I have a very simple question over here. Are we only questioning the Election Commission of India, or are we also questioning what the Supreme Court has had to say, or are we also questioning what the CAG has had to say? Because as far as the performers recommendation is concerned, that comes from the CAG to the Election Commission.
This pro forma has given to all parties, and I am going to tell you, this will be added in Model Code of Conduct. This will be added in the Model Code of Conduct.
Right.
And earlier this was for the poor public, for public society. They were the poor person. But now it has become the practice. All parties for the voter interest in the politics involved. Now, Like I can mention you the in case of the AAP parties has given in Delhi and in Punjab. Now you see the losses. Losses has in the 4 years the losses has gone depth 7%. Last 4 years. This is the CAG report. Now we can calculate 34,700 crore rupees. Where is the money comes from? You tell me.
Right, Mr.
Nobody is
Subramaniam.
going to tell the public. Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Subramaniam,
Yeah,
there's also talk of how laptops, bicycles, mixer grinders, television
given in
sets,
Tamil Nadu.
they are all distributed in the name of subsidies or rather freebies, and they don't even reflect in the state subsidy. I want to ask you, what are the kind of mechanisms that states or rather the government at the national level can bring in or the EC can bring in to check this kind of spending which is not even reflecting in the state subsidies?
Yeah. So answering you first, I would like to thank the Congress spokesperson for admitting, because if you noted her point, she said that BJP has also been irresponsible. So thanks for the admittance. Point number one. Point number two, answering your question that how can we bring in mechanism to ensure that such things are not done. Point number one, this is the first right step in first bringing a declaration. Now, whether this declaration is going to be audited, who is going to see the financial feasibility of this, and who is going to audit the post-poll promise versus execution. The most important thing is that a freebie is one that is announced just before the election. And that is the reason the EC is coming up with the model code of conduct. But let me tell you, there is going to be a lag in implementation. If I am the party spokesperson and I'm going to announce something today, I'm going to implement it 6 months later. My numbers in terms of my fiscal discipline may not be the same. So the audit mechanism has to be your past performance. The CAG has to be inside. The RBI and an independent committee, which is not part of any political party, should be there, auditing the state's debt to GSDP and then asking them a feasibility report on how are they going to fund it. Because at the end of the day, as you say, if you're going to give me laptops, cycles, bicycles, whatever, you're going to take it from my tax money. You have no right to do it until and unless I approve it.
Right.
So the state can also have a referendum to this, and any political party declaring this before the election should be straight banned. You need not even study the feasibility. This is only declared for vote bank politics and not for any welfare.
All right, Rajiv Pandey, let's talk about Gujarat, for example, whether it's Ahmedabad or Gandhinagar or various other parts of Gujarat, which is, as we know, is a poll-bound state. The BJP's, there's always this argument that's being presented that the BJP is aiming to counter Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party's poll promise of free electricity, farm loan waivers, free health and even education by launching various facilities for the needy. How do you react to those arguments?
You understand between the difference between the freebies and welfare scheme. You know, when there was no election, free vaccination was done and 80 crores people were given food grains. This was welfare scheme. If suppose BJP promises something for the poor people, Kisan Samman Nidhi is for farmers. It is not for all. What other parties are doing, I do not want to take the name of the parties. 300 unit free to all. How it is possible? Why you are giving a person who is paying tax? Why you are giving a person who is riding Mercedes and you are saying 300 units free to all? What I'm trying to say, welfare scheme, you know, there are many schemes which BJP has launched to the below poverty line people. Even Congress has done this in the past. Nobody opposed that. The freebies is, you come before election, you are doing sleeping. You are sleeping in your bed.
But Rajiv, you have to understand that if a certain party is in power in a state, only that party naturally will have the authority to launch those certain welfare schemes. How can a party which is not in power assure welfare scheme? It can only assure of certain welfare schemes. So yes, I do agree that there has to be a demarcation.
Just give me one line. Give me 30 seconds. What I'm trying to say, you know, Aam Aadmi Party is ruling in Delhi and Punjab. Congress is ruling in Rajasthan. What is their status? What is their position? You see the risk analysis report. And what EC is doing, you understand what is the debate point. EC is saying, okay, you are doing poll promises. You tell that how you will finance that. Don't lie to the people. Let people decide. I said on your channel, Rahul Gandhi tried this in 2019 election by offering something which Madam was quoting Chidambaram's name, who was laughing at the digital India cannot be successful. Now Modi ji has proved that digital India is successful.
All right, Mohammad Abir, if I could bring you in on this, how do parties which are fighting elections and in states which are not governed by them, how do they ensure that, they come up with welfare schemes which are not reveries, as Prime Minister would put it, or are not freebies?
I can say it's a public responsibility to understand which party is fooling them on the name of the freebies. And the last we can say freebies, because the dangerous for the economic stability of the country. It's not good for the country, not for the public, not for the anyone, not the party only.
Aishwarya,
is trying to do best for every party,
Aishwarya,
for
the question
every countryman.
That's also being posed by the common man is, why should the taxpayers' money be used to woo your vote bank?
Why should the common man's money be used to subsidize corporates? Why should the common man's money be used to give corporates a massive tax cut?
No, let's not digress over here. Let's answer questions which are being posed to two opposition parties.
There is obviously a distinction of priorities for political parties. While the dispensation might believe that corporate tax cuts will yield results, while the result is not so, there are several other parties that believe welfare measures, or rather extending far more social security, is what is required. And if by that logic of saying, why should the taxpayer pay for anything, then we can live in a completely capitalist society with no welfare function whatsoever.
You know why I'm asking that?
1 or 2% of the people
Mr.
to have
Subramanian, if I could bring you in on this. Should fiscal health of India... No, because your argument is right now falling flat. Should fiscal health of Indian states against the backdrop of Sri Lanka's debt crisis not be an... Are you forgetting the fiscal health of your neighboring country, Aishwarya?
If you do not let me complete an argument...
Okay, let Aishwarya... I have posed that question to Aishwarya now. Is Sri Lanka not an example?
Stability of the country.
Is Sri Lanka... Right, Aishwarya, is Sri Lanka not an example?
Yes, you are right. You are right.
I think it is extremely unfair when you allow other people
to complete. Aishwarya, that question I am asking you.
If you personally believe what I'm saying is wrong, then you should debate on the other side instead of constantly interrupting.
Aishwarya, I have given you enough time to speak up. You are not answering my question.
Let me complete or I will leave your show. Very simple.
What about Sri Lanka's debt crisis? Is that not an example for India?
One second. The singular point we're trying to make, pro forma or not, if the election commission and the authorities in this country can ensure an objective standard as to what qualifies as a revenue, because I remember the Prime Minister going to Tamil Nadu to release bikes, which technically were a freebie more than anything else. Is the path that if you can ensure objectivity, second, if you can ensure no discrepancy, and third, if you can hold them to the standards of performance, then it is absolutely fair. But if you believe it is not, and if you give us something when we see the sort of subjectivity of the government and the authorities, I believe it is absolutely unfair to the opposition parties in this case. If you want to extrapolate a country as large with a GDP as big as ours and as a growing tax net as large as ours to a country of Sri Lanka where it was only social spending with no capital return on it, then I think it is completely unfair. Why can't we compare India
It's very unfortunate, Aishwarya, that you are failing to get my point.
Or even the UAE.
It's very unfortunate that you are failing to get my point. You're missing my point. And that is why, Mr. Subramanian, we are talking about public debt sustainability in the backdrop of what's happened to the fiscal health of countries like Sri Lanka, which are our neighbors, and we've had to rescue them. Do you think India could have been in such a state if we were not prioritizing the fiscal health of our own states?
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely on the money and the point, and Aishwarya madam is missing the point, because let's not forget 3 decades back in 1991, we were in a situation where we were almost bankrupt as a country. We had to almost take the golden pledge. And before that, the number of years which party in this country, the whole country knows this. And the second point is that Sri Lanka's fiscal irresponsibility is just one example. There have been umpteen irresponsible states
All right,
in this
ladies and
country.
gentlemen,
No,
I'm
you
running
remember-
short of time. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it at that. Here's hoping that the opposition parties, in fact, manage to cooperate with the Election Commission and share those sources of funding and those financial implications. We'll have to leave it at that. As up next is Plain Speak with my colleague Grihatul Siddiqui.
Hello and a warm welcome. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Grihatul Siddiqui. Now, citing the state of India's economy and the need to improve it, the Aam Aadmi Party chief and the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has gone on to request Prime Minister Narendra Modi to have images of Hindu deities, Ganesha and Lakshmi, on the Indian currency. Yes, you heard that right. Now, while his divine intervention seems to have come